Continuing from the previous episode 1410. On the duty continent of the human world, there are scenes of shocking scenes, and the ghost world is also in full swing on the Tiandong continent. Daddy. This Xiaoyan. In the knife forging hall, the top executives of the Forging Knife Ligu and some disciples who participated in the Four Continents competition were all here, and a huge lineup of dozens of people made the place lively. I can't be in a hurry about the retreat. Duo Tianong also stood aside and took a sip of the tea in his hand. Originally, they were planning to leave for the Four Continents for a test in a month, but this guy, Xiaoyan, actually retreated for 2 months, and there was no sign of awakening, which made everyone slightly puzzled. It's been 2 months, Duan Qifei said in surprise, although he didn't know what level of heavenly seed Xiaoyan swallowed, but it's been a long time. Don't worry, although the Four Continents competition is imminent, Xiaoyan will not let us down. Duan Tianong said with words. After all, there are still 3 full months before the Four Continents competition. Hoo-hoo, it's almost there. At the same time, in the treasure pavilion inside the Thunder Valley, Xiaoyan's quiet body suddenly opened his pupils slowly and smiled. This retreat took almost 2 months. The original plan was to devour the heavenly seed for a month, but unexpectedly it wasted a lot of time. But it was also through this retreat that I completely adjusted the power in my body. Now, I am probably the first person below the 2-star Do Xian. Xiaoyan clenched his fist and felt the dazzling power in his body. His dark pupils flashing, couldn't help laughing. This guy, seeing that the fiery red great heavenly seed flame above Xiaoyan's fist was so scorching hot, only 1 line weaker than Shengyan, the Soul Eater also emerged and laughed. Next, go to the Four Continents for a test. The strength of the strong people you meet will naturally be more powerful, so you should try to use the holy flames in your body as little as possible. Before leaving, the Lord of Soul Eater also did not forget to instruct him. Teacher, don't worry, I have my senses. Seeing Soul Eater's concern, Xiaoyan nodded. Yinhushan's Xizhou is not as simple as Dongzhou, Xizhou Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. If the matter of the holy flame on his body is exposed, I am afraid it will lead to a lot of unnecessary trouble, but now with the power of the great heaven seed, it is also able to the holy flames cover the past. Since you're ready, let's go and join the main force first. After muttering a few words, Xiaoyan's body flickered and disappeared directly here. Crash! A sound from the space channel sounded, and Xiaoyan's figure reappeared in the knife forging hall. You kid, you are really blessed. Seeing Xiaoyan's appearance, Feng Yu immediately punched Xiaoyan and said with a smile. These guys, when Xiaoyan was in retreat, learned about Xiaoyan's great achievements, and immediately laughed. After all, not everyone can return safely from the hands of a 5-star fighting immortal powerhouse. Your strength. It seems a bit strange. Suddenly, the pastoral song on the side also turned his head and said to Xiaoyan. Pastoral's power in the early stage of the 3-star fighting immortals is somewhat incomprehensible to Xiaoyan. The power in Xiaoyan's body is too terrifying. Where's the Valley Master? After Xiaoyan greeted everyone, he immediately asked Du Qifei. The owner of the valley has gone out. How are you? Have you recovered? Seeing this, Yun Qi jumped to Xiaoyan's side and asked with concern. Some people, heartless and heartless. I got such good things for you. I don't even have a thank you. It's chilling. Seeing Xiaoyan and Yun Qi getting a little closer, I don't know if it was out of nowhere. Since jealousy is still a girl's nature, Duan Qifei couldn't help showing a hint of arrogance on her pretty face, and snorted coldly. Quote. Xiaoyan heard the words, and immediately looked at Yun Qi and Du Qifei's stance, and couldn't help but secretly complained. They all said that beauty is a disaster, but he clearly didn't provoke them, but he was still treated like this by them. Haha, let's go down and rest today. Tomorrow morning, I will lead everyone to the Four Continents to compete. With a move in the void, Duo Tianong came out to save the field at this time. Okay. After hearing the words, dozens of strong men nodded slowly, and then left the knife forging hall. You guys also go down to rest, you'll leave here tomorrow. Seeing that Xiaoyan's group did not show any signs of leaving, Du Tianong immediately said. Farewell. Xiaoyan also just appeared in retreat and hadn't had a good rest. After saying hello, he went directly to his residence. If you like him, why don't you just say it? As everyone left, only Yun Qi and Du Qifei were left in the knife forging hall. Suddenly Yun Qi stared at Du Qifei and said, with Yun Qi's tyrannical soul power and the girl's mind, it is naturally not difficult to guess. I hope so too, but my identity is special, and it is doomed that there is no result between me and him. And his identity, even his father can't see through, he shouldn't be so simple. Du Qifei suddenly changed into a person at this time, with a hint of helplessness in her beautiful eyes, and shook her head. This is the ghost world. After all, it is not a place where we humans live. We still have to go back to humans. If I were you, I would go after him desperately. No matter what the result is, it's good to be worthy of your heart. Yun Qi slowly shook his head, dropped such a sentence, and left here without looking back. Despite everything, are you worthy of your heart? But what if I'm ashamed? At this time, there was a trace of tears in Duo Qifei's beautiful eyes. Obviously, since the activation of the reincarnation fluctuation, Thunder Lord's power has been faintly faint. The beginning of the infiltration, causing Du Qifei to know something more or less. Among these things, there are people who belong to the Shao clan, and even the origin of the Thunder Lord and the Shao clan, but Duo Qifei refused to talk about it. This East Continent is really a very good place. Back at his residence, Xiao Yan felt the extremely pure energy of heaven and earth in the Thunder Realm for the first time, and couldn't help but say. The Do-Chi continent where Xiao Yan used to be, could not set foot in Do-Di without Origin Qi, but Origin Qi can be seen everywhere in Do-Di continent and even in places like Yin Hushan, and even integrated into the energy of heaven and earth. As for the depleted Origin Qi of the Do-Chi continent and the abundant Origin Qi of the Do-Di continent, the problem between the two is probably related to the level of the plane. But there is no doubt that the plane level of Do-Di continent is definitely not as high as that of the Ghost Realm. After all, it is known from the quantity and quality of Do-Xian powerhouses. Okay, kid, get familiar with the heavenly seeds tonight. Above the 4 continents, it's nice to have you. Seeing Xiao Yan suddenly becoming sentimental, the Soul Eater said directly. Yep, I don't know that this trip will compete in 4 continents. What will happen? Xiao Yan also quietly went down with his legs crossed, and then he practiced quietly, looking forward to it. Genius website address. Mobile version reading website. Continuing from the previous episode 1411. The next day, when the early morning sun was scattered, the Thunder Valley forging the knife was also busy. Because today was the day when Duo Tianong led the Eastern Continent powerhouses to the 4 continents for a test. Everyone is here. Duo Tianong wore a silver-gold cloak above the huge valley basin inside the Thunder Valley of forged knives. Originally, there were 3 stages in the ratio of Dongzhou this time, and even the winner would enter the Thunder Valley and many other benefits, but no one expected that it would be damaged by the power of the Ghost Clan, Sin and the Soul Hall, so Du Tianong was also going to Thunder Valley import seals, thus compensating for some of the other treasures to contestants. Thunder Valley is mysterious, but it is the root of the forged sword Thunder Valley, so there is such a serious gaffe, Duo Tianong does not dare to open it. It's all here. Duo Lao, who was on the side, also glanced around, and then said, Is it finally time to start? Xiao Yan and Duan Qifei stood aside, and their eyesight became hot. The powerhouses above the 4 continents are far from comparable to the East Continent in terms of quantity and quality, and Xiao Yan still has many missions, so that improving his strength is an indispensable path. As for improving strength, the best measure is to swallow the holy flame. But things like holy flames are too sparse after all, so you can't find them, so there are other measures to improve your strength, and fight against the strong. Hey, it's finally about to start. It is said that this 4-continent competition is the most solemn one on all the Yin Hushan. There are also many powerhouses on the other 3 continents. Hey, what's that? As long as you can participate in the 4 continents competition, then if you are chosen by the senior management of Li Sol territory and participate in the Li Sol territory, that will be the glory of your life. The disciples from all around also whispered, but when talking about Li Sol territory at that time, his eyes were filled with expectation and respect. Since all of them are clear, if it is not for the high-level governance of Li Sol territory, I am afraid they will not have such a stable and prosperous world, so they also respect the Lord of Li Sol. Li Sol territory. Xiao Yan nodded lightly when he heard the words, obviously this place will arrive one day. Everyone be quiet. In an instant, Duo Tianhong's body floated slightly. This time, I will lead everyone to the 4 continents to compete. On the way, No matter what happens, you must report it to me as soon as possible. If there are any unorganized and undisciplined things along the way, they will all be handled according to our rules. You remember, after you leave Dongzhou, you represent not your own power, but all of Dongzhou, so you should lose your personal ideas as soon as possible. Competition in 4 continents, only by teamwork can we have a chance to win. Although the performance is outstanding, it will be selected by the strong souls of the soul, but the chance is too small. And if one of you, someone has done something to embarrass us in Dongzhou, don't blame me for not being sympathetic. Duan Tianong said in a fit of rage. Disciple knows. Disciple knows. Disciple knows. And with the occurrence of this scene, dozens of disciples immediately said in unison with the enemy, with a mighty momentum that was as deafening as rolling thunder. They all made it clear that their strength could almost be said to be top-notch above Dongzhou, but Dongzhou was only a continent in the 4 continents of Yinhushan after all. Although the ranking was not the bottom, it was definitely not the first. And once they left the eastern continent, the people who were waiting for them were also the proud sons of the other 3 continents. While they were looking forward to a strong opponent in their hearts, they couldn't help but feel a sense of collective honor in their bodies. Old Du, I will leave you with many affairs in the valley. Looking at the many disciples who shared the same hatred in front of him, Du Tianong immediately smiled at the old man beside him. Where is the owner of the valley? This is our responsibility. The big boss and the 3rd boss were busy in the valley, so they didn't come. The 2 bosses asked me to apologize on behalf of the boss. Du Lao said with a bright expression. It doesn't matter. Duan Tianong smiled casually. Obviously, he was the overlord of Dongzhou, but many things in Dongzhou were left to his subordinates, so Duan Tianong was happy to know that the big boss and the 3rd boss were so busy. Since the preparations are ready, let's go. Looking at the disciples below, Du Tianong suddenly laughed. This trip to 4 continents, I don't know how many rankings they can get in Dongzhou. The number of rankings depends on how many disciples are selected by the senior leaders of Li Hanyu, and this ranking is related to the strength ranking of Yinhushan Xizhou, and it is also related to the resources that Li Hanyu gives to Xizhou, so the ratio of the 4 continents is in Yinhushan is a great prosperous world. It's ready, many disciples below also suddenly said. The gate of space. As the disciple below spoke, Duo Tianong nodded slightly, and then the silver gold cloak wriggled, and the power of thunder in his body was suddenly mobilized, and suddenly, the entire valley was covered with dark clouds. Crash! The silver thunder suddenly emerged from the dark clouds, and then it continued to gather in the sky. After a few minutes, a huge silver thunder gate with a size of hundreds of feet appeared. What a magnificent handwriting! Looking at the silver giant gate surrounded by countless thunders in the sky, Xiao Yan had a profound feeling. With his tyrannical soul strength, Xiao Yan created impressively. This giant silver gate is the gate of space. The gate of space that can make the 5-star fighting immortals so laborious. I am afraid that the distance between China Unicom is extremely wide. Xiao Yan also muttered, that's natural. The 4 continents competition is no child's play. Yinhushan is divided into 4 continents, east, west, northwest, but for the fairness of the competition, the 4 continents competition is not on the territory of any continent. It's in the central intestine belt of the 4 continents of Yinhushan. It is also the habitat of the so-called Lord of the Yinhushan Plain. Du Qifei, who was beside Xiao Yan, shone slightly and said sweetly. Master of Plains. Xiao Yan's heart also became hot. The strength of the overlord of Yinhushan Dongzhou has reached a 5-star fighting immortal, and the power of this plain master may have reached the point of Tongshuan. Boom! Just when Xiao Yan hesitated, the sleeves of Tianhong's sleeves were shining brightly, and an incomparably huge silver boat with a size of 100 meters suddenly appeared. Spaceships for space travel over long distances. As we all know, the space passages are extremely dangerous, not to mention the space travel at such a long distance. Only spaceships can reduce a lot of danger, although the cost of spaceships is quite high. Everyone, get into the boat. The ratio of the 4 continents officially set off. As Du Tianhong's voice fell, everyone immediately entered the huge spaceship in an orderly manner, and then at the same time, they did not enter the giant space gate and moved towards the 4. The continental test is officially set off. I hope this time, we can let Dongzhou sit on the real overlord of Yinhushan. Du Lao looked at the slowly closing space gate, and also slowly muttered. The fastest update website for the mobile version. The latest chapter 12412 of the latest chapter of the novel Fight Breaks the Sky God Yan Emperor go to the 4 continents to compete. URL. Continuing from the previous episode 1412. Boom. In a certain void, there is no sky, only the dark space and the power of the brutal space are filled. At the same time, in the space, a huge silver ship is advancing steadily. The whole body of the ship is silver, as if it was completely wrapped by silver thunder, so other forces in some space passages are easily avoided. This spaceship is impressively where the powerhouses of Xizhou are located. Why are you sitting here alone? In an instant, on the deck of the ship, a figure quietly watched the endless space outside the ship through the silver shield, so a silver bell-like female voice rang softly not far behind her. Chief A. After being called out like this, Xiao Yan paused for a while before turning his attention back and smiling at Qian Ying, who was approaching. The figure sitting on the deck was Xiao Yan, and the woman walking towards him was naturally Du Qifei. What are you doing here? Others are taking advantage of the time they are on the spaceship to practice hard. Don't be lazy. Duan Qifei also came to Xiao Yan, smiled sweetly, and finally sat on the ground in front of Xiao Yan. It's not a fool to cultivate in total. Occasionally, you have to relax a little. Xiao Yan scratched his head and said. In fact, Xiao Yan originally planned to retreat in his own house, but in the past 2 months of retreat, all Xiao Yan's things were cleaned up, so now Xiao Yan can't calm down and retreat, so he left the house alone and came to the deck. I don't know what I'm thinking about. Where's the Valley Master? The next moment, Xiao Yan asked. Father and several accompanying ancestors keep the ship's energy in the ship. After all, this kind of long-distance space travel, there is no other energy support, just rely on the energy of the spaceship itself, cannot reach the target. Duo Qifei smiled. Road. Originally, Xiao Yan said with a smile, and in that instant, the two of them were also chatting in a low voice on the deck. At the same time, in this space passage, 100 miles away from the Xizhou spaceship, a relatively small spaceship also suddenly emerged. Master Mu Shi. Create a spaceship ahead. At this time, several figures stood on the deck of the spaceship, and one of the men on guard said, What kind of power? The young man on the deck heard the words, slowly surprised, and asked. If it's unsurprising, I'm afraid it's above the East Continent. The man continued to speak. Xizhou? When the young man Mu Shi heard the words, he smiled slowly, and some bad motives emerged. Master, what are you doing? The man couldn't help but ask as he watched the guy in front of him with hot eyes, and he vaguely guessed something in his heart. Open the shield, and I will meet them when I go out. After a while, Mu Shi burst out with a brutal fighting spirit and smiled. Master, it's absolutely impossible. At this time, the powerhouses of the 4 continents are all heading towards the test site, and there is no chance of another incident. And Xizhou's spaceship is much bigger than ours. I am afraid they are led by strong people, and we are only the only one who has the power to go. The combat power is not at the same level. The middle-aged man couldn't help but said with fear and trepidation when he heard the words. As the helmsman of the spaceship, he can naturally distinguish the tyranny of power according to the size of the spaceship. Although they are powerful and famous on the Western continent, but they only go to the 4 continents to compete, so the spaceship is only a few tens of feet in size, but the spaceship in the East Continent below is 100 feet in size, which is enough to explain the implications. The number of strong people in the world is absolutely not something they can resist. Stop talking. Father, they are maintaining the energy of the spaceship, don't bother them. Don't worry, I'm measured. Mu Shi said with a smile, his eyebrows filled with arrogance. Master, it's better to report to the Pavilion Master. If we cause trouble, I'm afraid we can't afford it. The middle-aged man said in fear. All incidents, remember it on my head. Open the door. In an instant, Mu Shi snorted coldly. Hateful. Open the door, the middle-aged man said with gritted teeth while watching the death of the guy in front of him. Crash. As soon as the voice fell, a gap appeared in the shield of the spaceship, and Mu Shi immediately left the gap and headed towards the Xizhou spaceship. The space channel is extremely dangerous, but the powerhouse fighting immortal can naturally fly in space for a short time, but if it is a long flight, let alone whether the fighting spirit can support it, it is just the extremely strange space power in the space channel. Or the turbulent flow of space is enough to make the immortal fighters fearful. Boom. An ear-piercing sound of breaking wind suddenly sounded dozens of miles away from the Dongzhou spaceship. What? Xiao Yan and Duo Qifei were still sitting quietly on the deck discussing matters. Suddenly Xiao Yan's brows twitched. Through the energy of his soul, there seemed to be a strange feeling outside the spaceship at this time. A weak smell is approaching. What's the matter? Duan Qifei was also skeptical when Xiao Yan's sudden stern smell was frightened. There is a smell approaching us. Xiao Yan's eyesight passed through the silver shield, looking towards the distant void, and said solemnly. This smell is extremely tyrannical, and it is not inferior to madrigals, even more tyrannical than madrigals. The power of space? Could it be spatial turbulence? In an instant, Duo Qifei also created something wrong and hurriedly said, Wrong. There are enemies. After a while, Xiao Yan said abruptly. Boom. In an instant, a silent and colorless space energy suddenly hit the light shield of their spaceship. What should I do now? Du Qifei asked. GU Master can't be distracted when he controls the spaceship, and there is still a lot of space between the control center here. I will stop him, and you will inform the Valley Master. Xiao Yan analyzed. Be vigilant. Duo Qifei nodded slightly. Before the words were finished, Xiao Yan's figure immediately disappeared on the deck and swept out of the spaceship. Oh, the powerhouse above East Continent? In the space passage, Mu Shi saw Xiao Yan's body and immediately laughed. Who are you? Why did you attack the spaceship we were riding on without authorization? Xiao Yan didn't act rashly and snorted coldly, noticing the brutal space power on the man in front of him. Empty phoenix bird. Mu Shi did not give Xiao Yan any sympathy, and suddenly, a huge phoenix shadow composed of the power of brutal space suddenly appeared in the void. Wang buzzing, the phantom phoenix shadow just appeared, and suddenly there was an extremely tyrannical oppression in the space around him, making Xiao Yan like a formidable enemy. Red flame sea of fire. Looking at the man's fierce attack Xiao Yan at the same time, the heavenly seed flame suddenly emerged in his body, instantly wrapping all the void, a fiery red sea of flames, exuding majesty smell. Mu Yunfei, if your son thinks he has a long life, this king doesn't mind taking him. Anyway, it's not the first time I've killed you people in Xiyun Pavilion. And just when the two were evenly matched, not far behind Xiao Yan, a shocking thunder sound suddenly sounded. At the moment when this voice sounded, the energy in Xiao Yan's body couldn't help but solidify. He, Duan Tianong, don't want the villain to be successful. The last hatred, this time we will completely get it back. At the same time, a loud voice resounded from behind the young man, but his aura was not as strong as Du Tianong. The fastest update website for the mobile version, the latest chapter of the novel Fight Breaks the Sky God of Yan Emperor Chapter 1413 The Battle of the Four Spaces, Xiyun Pavilion in Xizhou. URL. Continuing from the previous episode 1413. If that's the case, then get out. In an instant, Duan Tianhong's voice boomed, and he easily knocked the young man back a lot. Boo-hoo! As the voice fell, in the void, the space phoenix shadow and the sea of fire instantly vanished, but behind Xiao Yan, a gray thunder, like a frightened arrow, shot wildly towards him. Shabu shabu. After a while, Mu Shi was instantly retracted by the endless big hand. In an instant, this space passage was quiet again. Crash. Xiao Yan's figure also returned to the deck. What's going on? Just returned to the deck, and immediately saw the figures of Duo Qifei and Duo Tianong, and asked immediately. Because of listening to the conversation between the two just now, these guys seem to know each other? Old opponent. Duan Tianong smiled slowly, but his voice was full of contempt. Those guys are a strong power above Xizhou, named Xiyun Pavilion. While I was still young, they forced me to settle a marriage with the young master in their pavilion in the last Four Continents competition, in front of the Four Continents, but my father refused, and they almost kidnapped me in the end. Let's go. Duan Qifei echoed slightly. A hint of blush appeared on her pretty face. Obviously at that time, she naturally didn't understand these things. Then what? Xiao Yan asked. Then, my father was furious, and when the evidence is real, the third head of Mu Yun Pavilion is still an endless sophistry. Finally let daddy die, Duo Qifei said slightly, but he had a trace of enthusiasm in his heart. Obviously, if he hadn't been playful, he wouldn't have been deceived by these guys. One palm, Pai passed away? Xiao Yan felt a deep tremor in his heart. Obviously, Tianhong's actions were too resolute, but after thinking about it, someone did this to a little girl. As a father, he has such means. It is also reasonable. Yeah, he passed away with a slap. He doesn't even have any soul power left. By the way, the strength of the third master seems to be a 4-star fighting fairy. Duo Chife said innocently, as if he was stating an extremely mediocre thing. In front of the powerhouses competing in the 4 continents, I slapped the deceased 4-star fighting immortals with a slap in the face. Although the master of the Forging Valley is powerful, I am afraid that this beam will also be forged. Xiao Yan swallowed a mouthful of saliva and couldn't help but say. No wonder that guy just now saw that he was from Dongzhou, and he acted directly without saying a word, and he had such a deep hatred in his emotions. It's okay. Xiyun Pavilion's strength is not enough to be afraid of. They are not the strongest on the western continent. Duo Chife laughed. Let's go, after a while, we will arrive at the destination. After the words were finished, the two of them also returned to their rooms. Forget 8. Look at what good things you have done. At the same time, in the spaceship of Xiyun Pavilion, Mu Shi was also reprimanded by a group of powerhouses. I just don't agree. Last time, my third uncle sacrificed his life for nothing, and I naturally want to find face for him. At this moment, Mu Shi was kneeling in a house in the spaceship. There were only 3 people in the house, Mu Shi and his father, Mu Yunfei, and a rather mysterious guy. But at this time, Mu Shi still did not repent at all, said. If it wasn't for you, the little princess of Thunder Valley, what would have happened? Get your face back? Just relying on you, the 3-star fighting immortal? It's not even worthy to give Duan Tianhong shoes. Why did I, Xiyun Pavilion, have a waist like you? The middle-aged man sitting in the first place couldn't help but said angrily, his face flushed with anger because of the man in front of him. The pavilion master calms down. The young master is also for the third master. After a while, the third person in the house said impressively. Mu Xin, as the second head of our Xiyun Pavilion, I'm afraid that what happened back then was more clear than me. As the middle-aged man in front of him spoke, Mu Yunfei sneered. At the beginning of the 4 continents competition, the third brother led us to go with power. At that time, the third brother took the young Mu Shi to go, and originally planned to let him observe and observe. But where do you think that this guy took a fancy to the girl of forging knife Li Gu Dukifei at a glance, and insisted on pestering the third brother to make a marriage for him? But Duo Chifei also rushed out from the 4 continents to compete, so he didn't know his specific identity. Later, Duo Tianhong found out that he would not give it a shot, so he made this decision, so he completely fell. Mu Xin, the second head of Xiyun Pavilion, he said gloomily, his voice was full of chills. Even if the third brother made a mistake first, but Duo Tianhong directly obliterated it in front of many strong people, and it would not give them Xiyun Pavilion face. That matter, no matter right or wrong, the grievances between us and Forged Sword Thunder Valley are insoluble. However, your clumsy approach is a bit of a disgrace to our Xiyun Pavilion. Mu Yunfei snorted coldly and cursed. Father, Mu Shi couldn't help but be overjoyed when he looked at the man who was slowly weakening in anger. The next time, give me a little quiet. Don't worry. I will make them pay back this debt from Forged Sword Thunder Valley sooner or later. Mu Yunfei sneered, his voice extremely gloomy. Let's go down first. After that, the silence here was restored. In an instant, in the space channel, there are also many spaceships emerging, and it is obvious that countless powers are also distinguishing and competing against the 4 continents. At the same time, a very strange scene was also staged in a rather mysterious place in the Ghost Day. This is an extremely dim forest. In the forest, dead trees and spooky crows are constantly flying and emerging. There is even no green at all. What it has is just silence and no vitality at all. Han Qinmo, the guy who should have died, was actually arrested. In the ragged hut in the woods, a gray-haired old man lying on the seat slowly opened his listless pupils, and suddenly felt a heavy feeling, impressively filled the entire space. The Hallmaster has already said that we, the 5 Soul Guards and the 12 Soul Venerables, should not be involved in the plans of foreign evil clans, and since 5 Soul Guards Soul Qinmo still won't listen. And this time, their plan is not only to lose a ghost family, but also to lose a sinner. This will have a great impact on the evil tribes and sins outside the territory, and they should be able to deal with it. But this time, our soul palace will not accompany you. When your battle starts, we will naturally follow you to collect the soul. At that time, our vigor will increase, he he. The old man let out a sinister smile, but the fluctuation of soul vigor on his body was more impressive than that of his body. Xiao Yan was arrogant and even more arrogant than Du Tianong. A powerhouse with such terrifying strength is probably the 12 soul masters of the Soul Hall or one of the best powerhouses among the 5 soul guards. Mobile version update fastest URL. The latest chapter of the novel Fight Breaks the Sky God Yan Emperor Chapter 1414 The Tranquility Before the Storm Thanks to the Rain. Thanks to Sakura for the 1/10th update, URL. Continuing from the previous episode 1414. Gulagulu. After a month, it was slowly delayed, so everyone also took the spaceship and quickly went to the 4 continents to compete. With the lessons learned from the previous Xiyun Pavilion, Du Tianong also increased his guarding efforts, so there was no strange thing on the way, and everyone in Dongzhou easily arrived at the 4 continents competition site. GU Master is calling us together for what? I don't know. I'm afraid the owner of the valley has his plan. In a vast room, the tyrannical disciples of Mu Gyunchi were the main ones, and they looked at each other and said, "Everyone be quiet. The purpose of calling everyone this time is to popularize the whereabouts of the next person with everyone. You are one of the best in our eastern continent, and the 4 continents will depend on you." Duo Tianong said with a smile. Shabu Shabu. When everyone heard the words, they couldn't help but feel joyful, their eyes fixed on Du Tianong. The 4 continents competition site is called Tianming Mountain Villa. Duo Tianong was the first to speak. Tianming Mountain Villa? In an instant, Mu Zhe felt a little suspicious and spoke first. That's right, Tianming Villa. Tianming Mountain Villa. This is a huge mountain range located in the core intestine belt of the 4 continents. The villa stands in a treasure land with extremely rich spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It is surrounded by a sea of dust. The so-called Sea of Dust is extremely dangerous. Ming Mountain Villa was forced to cover. Duo Tianong explained, "The mountains in the sea?" Xiao Yan couldn't help but let out a wry smile after hearing Duan Tianhong's description. You can understand that Tianming Villa is indeed wrapped in a sea of dust. Duan Tianhong said, "Will this competition take place at sea?" Xiao Yan swallowed and said slowly, "Xiao Yan possesses a devastating fire attribute, but if he fights in water, his power will be greatly reduced." "Will not. In the Sea of Dust, the danger is extremely dangerous, and the competition grounds have been held inside Tianming Mountain Villa in all dynasties." Duo Tianong said, "It was like this." Xiao Yan heard that, and immediately dispelled the worries in his heart. "Do you have any questions?" Looking at the contemplative crowd, Duo Tianong spoke up after a while. Duan Tianong called them together this time, mainly for the purpose of conveying this information. After all, they are undoubtedly the powerhouses above Eastern Continent, but they know very little about them. "Since it's all right, let's go into the sea." Seeing that everyone didn't speak, a smile slowly appeared on the corner of Duan Tianhong's mouth, and then the fighting spirit in his body was instantly injected into the spaceship. Wang buzz. After a while, the huge spaceship shook violently, and then suddenly tore the space and entered it head to head. The core intestine belt of the 4 continents. Is it the Sea of Dust? Xiao Yan murmured softly when he noticed the sudden increase in speed. Boom! After a few breaths, the spaceship left the space channel directly, and the dazzling sunlight poured directly on everyone's body. What a rich energy of heaven and earth! Xiao Yan couldn't help but say when he just arrived here. Obviously, the energy of heaven and earth contained here is several times more tyrannical than Dongzhou. Gulu. After the dazzling rays of light dispersed, the panoramic view here was seen by everyone. At this time, they stood in the spaceship, and the spaceship stood in the air. As for their spaceship, there was an island with a large area. On the island, there was a lot of vegetation, but the small island and compared with the spaceship, it is nothing short of nothing. And Xiao Yan's eyesight and soul strength, but when he saw the island below, he couldn't help shrinking. Obviously, there seemed to be an extremely tyrannical power of space on the edge of the island below. Go down, Duan Tianong whispered, and in an instant everyone left the spaceship in an orderly manner and came to the island. What should I do? Some disciples also said in a hurry. At this time, they were in a vast ocean. Look, what is that? After a while, Yun Qi's beautiful eyes stared at a place in the ocean, and his jade finger lightly pointed. That's. Everyone followed Yun Qi's direction, but they saw a trace of mysterious white clouds and mists that completely shrouded them, and behind those white clouds, I'm afraid there is something terrifying. This is a sea of dust. And the center of the sea of dust is Tianming Mountain Villa, which is the place you said is covered by white clouds. In Duo Tianhong's eyes, there was a hint of relief. Obviously this is not the first time here. Finally, is it here? Xiao Yan suddenly smiled slowly when he heard the words. Tianming Mountain Villa, where all the ghosts and geniuses are gathered. This is tantamount to an experience for me. Hey, don't get excited too early, Duan Tianhong said when everyone's hearts were hot. Everyone, come on board. 5 people in a group. In an instant, Duo Tianhong's brutal fighting qi emerged from his body, and he came directly to the island, and then communicated with the rare power of space. Emerge. Do you want us to pass by ourselves? The shelf of Ming Mountain Villa is too big today. When some strong men heard this, they were immediately dissatisfied. This is the regulation of Tianming Mountain Villa. If you don't even have this strength, then the 4 continents competition is just a shame. Let's go. As Du Tianhong's voice fell, the division of labor was clearly defined, and they took the boat directly and headed towards Tianming Villa. Boom! This expansive ocean is extremely vast, and everyone on it is as small as a grain of sand. There seems to be something under this sea area? Could it be my illusion? Xiao Yan held the direction and energy of the boat, but his eyesight was staring at the bottomless vast sea, and he muttered slightly. The 5 of them were Xiao Yan, Du Qifei, Lu Qing, Yun Qi and Mu Zhe. This sea area gave Xiao Yan a sense of heaviness, and neither vindictive energy nor soul energy could be detected at all. Obviously, the depth of this sea area was too deep, but out of intuition, Xiao Yan knew vaguely that in this sea area, afraid of danger. Hoo! Just as everyone was moving steadily forward, the piercing sound of the sea in the originally calm sea, accompanied by some strange things, slowly emerged. Peefed. At that time, a gap the size of a fist appeared under the boat that Xiao Yan's 5 people were riding on. The ship was damaged by this sudden attack, and their speed suddenly dropped. What's going on? Seeing this, Yun Qi couldn't help but gathered around and whispered. Obviously, with her soul perception, she had created a situation in which other ships were the same except for their ships. It seems that this sea area is not simple. Casting a glance at Duo Tianhong, who was calm and indifferent, Xiao Yan also recalled that this sea area seemed to be the experience of entering Tianming Mountain Villa. If that's the case, then let me get to know you well. Xiao Yan also smiled slowly. His attention and eyesight became abnormally strong. Once the mysterious creature in the sea area made any move, he would be the first time to know. The fastest update website for the mobile version. The latest chapter of the novel Fight Breaks the Sky God Yandi Chapter 1415 The Sea of Dust Meets Thousands of Enemies. URL